The air hung thick, a damp shroud clinging to my skin as I pushed through the rusted gate. Iron shrieked, a dying gasp echoing into the twilight. Vines, gnarled and thick as a man's arm, clawed at the stone pillars, their tendrils like skeletal fingers reaching through the darkening sky. The house, a hulking silhouette against the bruised purple horizon, loomed at the end of a choked, winding path. Its windows, black and vacant, were eyes staring out from a skull, reflecting nothing but the encroaching night. A chill, deeper than the evening air, snaked up my spine. It was the kind of cold that seeped into bones, whispering of forgotten things. I pulled my jacket tighter, the worn denim offering little comfort. My flashlight beam, a nervous tremor in the gloom, danced across the overgrown lawn, illuminating patches of sickly yellow grass and the skeletal remains of rose bushes. Each step crunched on brittle leaves, a sound amplified in the oppressive silence. "You really think this is a good idea, Liam?" Sarah's voice, a thin thread of unease, cut through the quiet. She hugged herself, her gaze fixed on the house, a frown etching lines between her brows. "It's just an old house, Sarah," I replied, trying to inject a confidence I didn't entirely feel. My voice, however, came out rougher than intended, a gravelly whisper. "A few ghost stories, that's all." "Ghost stories that end with people disappearing," Mark added, his breath pluming in the cold. He adjusted his camera bag, the heavy equipment jostling against his hip. "Or worse." "That's the point, isn't it?" Chloe chirped, a ghoulish glee in her tone. Her bright pink hair, a stark contrast to the gloom, seemed to hum with nervous energy. "To see if they're true." We were all fools chasing urban legends for a thrill, for content. Our channel, Midnight Mysteries, thrived on the macabre, the unexplained. But this place, Blackwood Manor, felt different. It had a weight, a history that pressed down, suffocating. The porch groaned under my weight, rotten planks protesting with each footfall. The front door, a heavy slab of oak, hung ajar, a gaping maw inviting us in. I pushed it open further, the hinges screaming. Dust motes danced in the sliver of moonlight that pierced the gloom, illuminating a grand foyer swallowed by decay. A sweeping staircase, its banister carved with grotesque faces, spiraled upwards into darkness. Wallpaper, once vibrant, now peeled in curling strips, revealing the plaster's sickly yellow beneath. The air inside was still, thick with the scent of mildew, dust, and something else. Something metallic, like old blood. "Well, here we are," I announced, my voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "Blackwood Manor, home sweet home." "It smells dead," Sarah murmured, her hand instinctively reaching for mine. Her fingers were cold, trembling. "It's just old," Mark countered, his camera already unslung, lens cap off. He aimed the viewfinder, capturing the decay. Everything eventually decays. "Not like this," Chloe whispered, her usual bravado dimmed. She pointed a slender finger towards a dark stain on the marble floor near the foot of the stairs. "That's not just decay, Mark." My flashlight beam followed her gaze. A dark, irregular splotch marred pristine white marble, a stark visceral reminder of something terrible. It was too dark for mildew, too rich for water damage. It looked like a dried pool of something. "Don't touch it," I warned, my stomach clenching. A chill, colder than any I'd felt outside, traced a path down my spine. "What do you think it is?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. "Let's not speculate," I said, trying to sound calm, rational. "Let's just explore. All of us stick together, all right? Mark, you lead the way with the camera. Chloe, keep an eye on the audio. Sarah, you stay between me and Chloe." We moved as a single hesitant unit, our flashlights cutting swaths through the inky blackness. Each room we entered told a story of sudden abandonment. A dining table set for a meal, now covered in a thick blanket of dust, plates caked with what looked like fossilized food. A rocking chair in the nursery, a faded, tattered doll slumped against its arm, its one single glass eye staring blankly into the void. The silence was punctuated only by our ragged breathing, the creak of floorboards, and the distant, mournful howl of the wind outside. "Did you hear that?" Sarah stopped, her head cocked. "Hear what?" I whispered, my heart thudding against my ribs. "A whisper," she insisted, her eyes wide. "Like someone calling my name." "It's just the wind," Mark dismissed, though his voice lacked conviction. He kept the camera rolling, its tiny red light a beacon in the darkness. "No, it wasn't the wind," Chloe chimed in, her voice hushed. "I heard it too, like Sarah." A cold dread settled over me. This wasn't a game anymore. This was real.
We continued our exploration, the whispers growing more frequent, more insistent. They seemed to slither from the shadows, teasing the edges of our hearing, always just out of reach. The air grew heavy, oppressive, as if the very walls were breathing. We found ourselves in a study, shelves overflowing with ancient, leather-bound books, their spines cracked and faded. A grand desk stood in the center, a single yellowed letter opener resting on a blotter. As my flashlight beam swept across the room, it caught something else. A portrait, hanging crookedly above the fireplace. It depicted a stern-faced man with piercing eyes, his features etched with a grim determination. His gaze seemed to follow us, a silent accusation. "Who do you think that is?" Chloe asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The original owner, perhaps?" Mark suggested, zooming in with his camera. "Elias Blackwood, maybe?" As he spoke, a faint scratching sound emanated from behind the portrait. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was rhythmic, persistent. "What was that?" Sarah gasped, clutching my arm, her nails dug into my bicep. I aimed my flashlight at the portrait. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. It sounded like something trapped, desperate to get out. "It's coming from behind the wall," I stated, my voice tight. "Maybe a rat?" Mark offered, but his eyes were wide with fear. The scratching intensified, then abruptly stopped. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the floorboards, vibrating up into our feet. It wasn't animalistic. It was something far more ancient, more monstrous. "We should go," Sarah pleaded, her voice trembling. "Now, Liam, please." "We're not leaving yet," I insisted, my own fear warring with a perverse curiosity. "Not until we see what that was." A mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. The portrait suddenly swung inwards, revealing a dark, narrow passage. A gust of fetid air, smelling of decay and something indescribably foul, billowed out, extinguishing Chloe's flashlight. She screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that tore through the silence. "Chloe!" I yelled toward her. Her pink hair, usually so vibrant, was now a mere blur in the darkness. I heard a choked gasp, a sickening thud. "What happened?" Mark shouted, his camera light dancing wildly. "I don't know," I screamed back, fumbling for my own light. When I finally found it, its beam revealed Chloe sprawled on the floor, motionless. Her eyes were wide, staring blankly at the ceiling, a thin stream of blood trickling from her temple. "Oh my God," Sarah whimpered, her hand clamped over her mouth. "Chloe!" Mark dropped his camera, scrambling toward her. He knelt, fumbling for a pulse. His face, when he looked up, was ashen. She's gone." A profound silence descended, heavier than any before. The growl returned, closer now, emanating from the secret passage. It was a sound that crawled under the skin, a promise of unspeakable horror. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, my voice raw with terror. "Now." We stumbled backwards, away from Chloe's still form, away from the yawning blackness of the passage. The house seemed to press in on us, the walls closing, the shadows deepening. We ran, a frantic, desperate dash through the labyrinthine corridors, our flashlights bouncing wildly, illuminating fleeting glimpses of decaying grandeur and encroaching dread. The whispers returned, louder now, clearer. They were no longer just whispers, they were voices, a cacophony of agony and despair, swirling around us, clawing at our sanity. "Get out!" a child's voice shrieked, echoing from the walls. "You're next," a woman's voice hissed, right in my ear. "Forever," a chorus of voices moaned, fading into a chilling silence. We burst back into the foyer, the grand staircase now appearing less majestic, more like a skeletal cage. The front door, our only escape, was a distant, unreachable promise. As we reached the bottom of the stairs, a figure coalesced from the deepest shadows at the very top. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated and twisted at unnatural angles. Its head was a featureless orb of darkness, but 2 pinpricks of crimson light glowed where eyes should be. A low, wet gurgle emanated from its throat. What is that?" Sarah sobbed, burying her face in my shoulder. "I don't know," I choked out, my voice barely a croak. My flashlight beam, trembling violently, illuminated the creature. It moved with a jerky, unnatural grace, descending the stairs one step at a time, each movement accompanied by a sickening crack and pop, as if its bones were breaking and resetting with every shift. "Stay back!" Mark yelled, raising his camera, not to film, but as if to ward off a beast. The creature ignored him, its head tilted, a silent, predatory assessment. A long, slender appendage, like a tendril of shadow, snaked out from its side, stretching towards us. It moved with impossible speed, wrapping around Mark's ankle. He screamed, a raw, terrified sound, as he was yanked off his feet, dragged across the marble floor towards the uprising horror. "Mark!" Sarah shrieked. I lunged forward, grabbing his arm, but the creature's grip was impossibly strong. I felt a searing pain as my shoulder was wrenched. The tendril tightened around Mark, his struggles growing weaker. "Liam! Sarah! Run!" he screamed, his voice dissolving into a choked gurgle as the creature pulled him into the darkness at the top of the stairs. His camera, still recording, clattered to the floor, its red light blinking forlornly. "No!" I roared, but it was too late. He was gone. Sarah and I were alone, 2 trembling specks against the vast, consuming darkness. The air grew impossibly cold, the kind of cold that stole breath, that froze terror in the heart. "We have to go," I gasped, pulling Sarah towards the front door. We fumbled with the rusted bolts, our fingers numb with fear. The creature's gurgling filled the house, a sound of sickening anticipation. The door finally creaked open, revealing the oppressive night outside. As we stumbled onto the porch, a new sound pierced the night. A low, mournful hum, vibrating from the very foundations of the house. It was a sound that spoke of ancient sorrow, of endless torment. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with unadulterated fear. The hum intensified, growing in volume, in intensity. The ground beneath our feet began to vibrate. The house itself seemed to breathe, to pulse with a malevolent life. The windows, those black, vacant eyes, now glowed with a faint crimson light, mirroring the creature's gaze. It's the house," I stammered, a horrifying realization dawning on me. "The house is alive." The hum became a low, guttural moan, and the front door, which we had just opened, slammed shut with a thunderous crack, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The rusted bolts shot back into place, securing us within the manor's suffocating embrace. "No!" Sarah screamed, pounding on the door. "Please let us out! Please!" But there was no one to hear her, no one to answer. We were trapped. The hum continued, growing louder, more pervasive, until it filled every corner of the house, every fiber of our being. It felt like a living thing, reaching into our minds, twisting our thoughts. The air shimmered, distorting the familiar shapes of the foyer. The grotesque faces carved into the banister seemed to leer, their stone eyes following our every move. "We have to find another way out," I said, my voice hoarse, pulling Sarah away from the door. We scrambled to the ground floor, our flashlights now flickering, their beams weakening. The voices returned, a maddening chorus of whispers and screams echoing from every shadow. The scent of blood, faint before, now grew stronger, thicker, coating the air. We found ourselves in the kitchen, a vast cavernous space, filled with rusted pots and pans, a massive hearth choked with ash. A butcher block table stood in the center, its surface stained with what looked like ancient, dried blood. As my light swept across it, I saw it. A glint of metal. A cleaver, its blade dark and pitted, lay waiting. "Liam, look!" Sarah's voice was a desperate gasp. I saw it, in the reflection of a tarnished copper pot. A fleeting glimpse of the creature standing in the doorway behind us, its dark, featureless head tilted. The two crimson pinpricks of light glowed with an intensified, malevolent hunger. "Run!" I yelled, pulling Sarah towards a back door, hoping against hope that it led outside. The creature moved. It didn't walk. It seemed to flow, a ripple of darkness, its elongated limbs stretching and contracting like shadows given form. The gurgling sound intensified, a wet, hungry sound. The back door was locked, bolted from the inside. We hammered on it, our fists a desperate rhythm against the unyielding wood. The creature was closer now, its presence chilling the air, making our teeth chatter. "It's here," Sarah whimpered, her body racked with shivers. I turned, my flashlight beam wavering, catching the creature as it entered the kitchen. It was taller than I'd remembered, its form shifting, twisting, its limbs extending and retracting with sickening snaps. The crimson eyes burned with an unholy light. "What do you want?" I screamed, my voice cracking. The creature stopped, its head tilting again. A new sound emanated from it. A low, drawn-out hiss, like air escaping from a ruptured lung. It raised one of its impossibly long arms, a tendril of shadow reaching towards Sarah. "No!" I lunged, pushing her behind me. The tendril wrapped around my wrist, its grip like iron. Pain shot up my arm, a blinding agony. I cried out, dropping my flashlight. It clattered to the floor, its beam flickering, then dying, plunging us into absolute darkness. Sarah screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. I heard a sickening squelch, a wet, tearing sound, then Sarah's scream cut off abruptly. "Sarah!" I roared, my voice raw with grief and rage. I thrashed, struggling against the creature's grip, but it was useless. Its strength was inhuman. The tendril tightened around my wrist, then began to pull, slowly, inexorably, dragging me closer to the unseen horror. I could feel its cold, dry skin against mine, a sensation that made my stomach churn. The hum of the house intensified, a deafening roar in my ears. The air grew thick with the metallic scent of blood, Sarah's blood. I felt something brush against my face, something cold and damp. A tongue? A tendril? I didn't know. All I knew was the overwhelming sense of dread, the suffocating presence of pure evil. The creature's gurgling intensified, a wet, satisfied sound. I felt a sharp, searing pain as something pierced my skin. A bite? A claw? My vision swum, black spots dancing before my eyes. The hum of the house reached a crescendo, a maddening shriek that threatened to tear my mind apart. Then darkness. Not the absence of light, but a consuming, absolute darkness that swallowed everything. The cold, the pain, the fear, all dissolved into an endless void. The sun, a pale, indifferent disk, rose over Blackwood Manor. The rusted gate still shrieked in the morning breeze. The vines still clawed at the stone. The windows, black and vacant, stared out at the world, reflecting nothing. Inside, the dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight, illuminating the decay, the silence. The dining table remained set, the rocking chair still. On the marble floor of the foyer, near the foot of the stairs, a new dark stain had appeared, a fresh, glistening pool against the pristine white. And at the top of the stairs, in the deepest shadows, the faint crimson pinpricks of light glowed, waiting. The hum, low and mournful, continued, a silent song of endless torment, a lullaby for the damned.
If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't vanish into the darkness without hitting that like button. Share your scariest experience in the comments below, because your story might be featured next. And remember, the scariest thing is missing out. So subscribe now, before the next nightmare finds you.